Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about what research tells us about enduring love and how couples are managing to sustain long-term relationships, the importance and significance of the ordinary things in a relationship, and how technology has been impacting our relationships. But before we get into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
I think that the most fueliest up part of my week, my fuel up, was having an extra day off. It was a long weekend in New South Wales, so having an extended weekend, and it makes a difference, doesn't it?
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah.
A little bit of extra breathing space for all the adulting things, but then also some time to actually rest and recharge, and then also some, we got a few little creative projects underway, and I think that in itself was just having what felt like a little bit more time.
Yeah, and I think like on a normal weekend for us, like it is pretty well packed in from like morning to evening to try and get everything done that we want to do and things like that. Whereas, this long weekend has felt really nice because we've been able to have a little bit slower pace in the morning, do our recent outdoor routine of getting out and exercising in the morning, and then still being able to get stuck into some good activities in the afternoon.
Do you know what else fueled me up?
What's that?
Is because we had that slow start morning. We had some really good snuggles.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that was good.
It's a little bit of physical touch, intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just nice to like slow start, have a bit of a chat and a cuddle in bed and not be bouncing out. Yeah, to
needing to be on and ready to go.
And,
Yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, and I think my fuel up was just what I touched on before about exercise routine for the week. So I set myself a step goal at the beginning of the year to do 8,000 steps a day. And
average of
8,000 steps a day. And let's just say I'm well behind that up until this last month. I'm still behind it at the moment, but I feel like I've got a little bit of mojo back and actually moving towards, achieving it for the next few months as opposed. I'm not going to be able to make up all the steps. Well, it would be very unlikely to make up all the steps that I need to hit an 8K average, but at least for the next couple of months, I should be able to at least hit that 8K. So I feel like I've got a bit of mojo.
Yeah, that's the consequence of working from home, isn't it? You got to do those 8,000 steps with the majority of them inside our tiny New South Wales, Sydney apartment.
Yeah. Well, I found like at my job a couple of years ago, I was hitting like over 10 or 12,000 steps a day just through incidental basically through my normal commute and a few other bits and pieces walking around the office and whatever else. But that's definitely not the case now.
Yeah, we do have a bit of a sprint on a couple of our 21 goals for 2021. For our year to wrap up at the end of the season, so the end of spring. But
making some progress.
We are.
We're
definitely making some progress.
Yeah. But now here's this week's guest.
Today we've got Dr Jacqui Gabb joining us. Jacqui is a professor of sociology and intimacy at the Open University in the UK and chief relationships officer at Paired. Her enduring love study on long-term couple relationships has received widespread critical acclaim, with findings being reported in national and international media. Her research and impact activities have been recognised by 3 prestigious awards: the BSA Philip Abrams Memorial Prize, 2009, the Open University Engaging Research Award 2014, the Evelyn Gillian Research Impact Award 2016. She's the author of The Secrets of Enduring Love, How to Make Relationships Last, and we're very excited to welcome you to the show, Jacqui.
Thank you for having me.
We are pretty excited to have this conversation, but I would love to kick off with, how did you get interested in the field of relationships?
I've been studying family life and relationships more generally for over 25 years. So there's a long-standing interest in research in the field. And we were developing a project on couple relationships. And what we noticed is that all of the research, across the board, all of the research was on the stressors, so the things that break couples up. Now, that's relevant and obviously really important, but it meant we actually know very little, in fact, in terms of research evidence, nothing on the things that keep couples together. So we wanted to develop a project and do an empirical investigation on how couples were managing to sustain their long-term relationships, because that was a missing piece of the jigsaw. And yeah, my personal interest is obviously like everyone else. You know, I'm a human being who wants relationships with people. And I'm interested to know the answers too. But it was really interesting to find out, you know, it's one of those things as an academic researcher, when you pick up a stone and you realize there's literally nothing underneath. We knew nothing about what people were doing. So that's why I switched in a way from wider family relationships to couple relationships.
And really, that was the intent behind the Date Forever podcast too, was there's all these couples out there that are just learning how to be in a relationship by, I guess, what they're observing or what they're seeing on TV or something like that. And there's nowhere that you actually really learn relationship skills and how to keep a relationship fueled up or how to stay together.
Absolutely. And in the Enduring Love study, which was the study that we ended up doing, funded by the Economic and Social Research Council in the UK, what couples were saying is what they saw on television media was irrelevant. You know, they knew it was fantasy. They knew it was spectacular and designed for audience ratings, not for real life. Even the, you know, so-called real life recordings aren't real. You know, they're all staged and performed. So what people are saying is, you know, well, if those performances, those enactments aren't something that we can rely on, and what we've got is, well, we've got our personal stories, we've got our personal relationships, we've got those that we were raised in the context of our family of origins, but those are often relationships that we want to be distinct from, do something differently to those rather than just replicate. And that's a whole bundle of deep psychology and trying to actually work through a lot of that stuff. So how do we learn, one, what functioning couple relationships look like, but two, how we might achieve that for ourselves? And that was something which we wanted to do a study to really investigate how couples were getting to that point of, one, I want to achieve this, and two, what were those different relationships looking like? Because whilst we think of the couple and the couple is this singular entity, actually what all of the research shows is there is no such thing as the couple or coupledom. There are couple relationships in the plural. And that's the thing we have to always bear in mind, that it's all about biography. It's about where we come from. It's what we bring to the relationship, and our sexual orientation, our gender, our class, our socioeconomic status, all of those things and a whole bundle of other things are really important and impact on how couple relationships are experienced.
That's so interesting. And this is where Nathan and I got super interested, and we sort of were scratching the surface trying to find something that was not, here's how you present well to go on a date and find a person and ask interesting questions to attract somebody. And then there's, that slither of information for couples who are about to get married and have made a decision to commit and do a premarital counselling of sorts. And then there seemed to be a whole heap of information for couples who were a bit further down the road and had maybe hit some turbulence, or the shine was wearing off, or the spark was dying, or they'd had kids and kind of it wasn't what they were expecting and they're trying to recorrect. But we couldn't find much in that sweet spot in the middle where it's like, I feel like I found someone that I want to do life with, but how do I do that constructively when I don't have any? I have never actively been taught the skills or learned the skills, and the family dynamic that I grew up in was not necessarily something I want to replicate. And then people are going out and trying to create these relationships and they've got no blueprint for what that looks like. So yeah, I'm really curious, what would you say was like the biggest curveball or thing that changed your paradigm within that study? What did you learn that was just like, wow, I really wasn't expecting that?
It's actually the power of ordinariness.
Yeah,
which sounds,
cool.
It's that weird thing, isn't it? It's like, so suddenly there was no big da-da moment where suddenly everything fell into place. No, if we do this, this is the sweet spot. This is, this is it. This is all you've got to do, these 5 things. And I was asked in so many interviews after the study was released, what are the top 5 tips? And it's like, well, the top 5 tips are that each couple, one, needs to do them, work out what the 5 tips are for themselves from a whole plethora that are available. But 2, that it's about everyday, ordinary, like mundanities. And that's what keeps couple relationships together. And so we asked a question in the survey, and the survey was implemented in the UK and then latterly in the Australia and in America. So we have a really nice cross-national data set, very large data set. And what people were saying into a question, what does your partner do that makes you feel appreciated? And we just thought, okay, I came to that thinking, I'm anticipating, they say thank you, they might say I love you, or, you're great, or some sort of affirmation of some kind. And it was a free text response. So this is, people could write absolutely anything in this survey. And some people wrote 1 or 2 words, and some people wrote a side of A4 of paper. So, we had a lot of responses, and, we coded all of that. So it took a long time. But the things people were writing were absolutely mind-blowing to me. They were saying, the thing that my partner does that makes me feel appreciated is they bring me a cup of tea in the morning. They take the rubbish out. They do the recycling. They take the dog for a walk. They give me 5 minutes on my own and take the kids off. It was very much the mundane, ordinary things that people were doing. And if you think, you could write anything in the world, what does your partner do that makes you feel appreciated? They take the rubbish out. That's not something I expected to hear. And actually in the UK context, the response of brings me a cup of tea in bed was so large, we had to code it separately. The actual words, cup of tea. And some,
the British
some people
stereotype coming
absolutely,
very true.
Absolutely. Some people put coffee, so we were open-minded. It was tea or coffee. But it was really interesting to think, and part of that cultural psyche of being in the UK and that's why I'm saying, all cupboards are different. All national contexts are different as well. And in the UK, being brought a cup of tea is a gesture of, giving, of loving, it's saying, I am giving you this gift of a cup of tea. Please take this. This is for you from me. And we have to remember that those gifts are about a reciprocal gesture. You give something, you receive something. There's a moment that passes between you where you say thank you, whether it's articulated or you just, drink the cup of tea. And that's really important. So that ordinary gift giving, which is, we can talk about it in different therapeutic terms, but that was really important to couples and how they maintain their relationships. And also, we must never forget that the key one was communication. And communication, we know, underpins all aspects of a relationship, because whatever's going on in the relationship, if you don't communicate about what's going on, whether it's good, bad or ugly, then actually you can't go forward. And sometimes that was through long, meaningful conversations, and sometimes that was through a hug, and sometimes that was through a gesture. But that couple communication was crucial.
Yeah. Hey, I'm really curious. The concept of the Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages comes up on our show all the time, and couples talk about that being quite a transformative framework if they've never applied it before. I'd be curious to know, were the findings with the research study consistent with what Gary Chapman suggested, that we give and receive love differently, or did you find something else?
No, I mean, it would be broadly speaking the same. I mean, and it would be extraordinary if it wasn't, truthfully. There's so much research that's long-standing across the field, and we may nuance it in different ways, but it's roughly the same. What's interesting is in the UK, we're not a therapeutic culture. Most people are highly resistant to entering into counselling of any kind, let alone couple counselling. And there's little access to that. I mean, there are great organisations like Relate, but, there's not let's just go and have counselling. And still, there's the words that were coming out were the same that you would find in something like the 5 languages. And that wasn't because they were familiar with them. They hadn't done their homework, but they still use those terms. It's the same things that everyone goes back to. So I think absolutely. But then it's how you get that teaching, almost, that education, that relationship care messaging to everyone. How do we absolutely the general population, if we accept that most people in the world actually are in couple paired relationships of some description, whether that just be new dating, whether that be cohabiting, whether that be marital, or any combination of that, or expansions on that, then it's really interesting that what we have is a variety of relationships and sex education in schools, some mandatory, some optional. But as soon as you're 16, it falls off a cliff edge. There is no ongoing relationship care outside of church communities. So yes, that may go on if you're part of a faith community. But if you're not...
And I can't imagine too many 16, 17-year-olds who are sexually active going to the church to talk about relationships. Just
maybe
a hunch.
Or if they do, they may not be completely open. Or, but I think also those are particular messages that come through church communities, which is about abstinence. It's about, wait till you get married. It's about marriage is sacrosanct, all of which is absolutely fine. If that's what your kind of reasoning and your mindset is, absolutely fantastic. For the majority of couples and young people individually, that may not be where they're fitting. And so where do they turn to? Where do they get information from? And also, where can we go for relationship care before there's a crisis? And I think that's where we're starting to see more things come out, like your podcast, like other podcasts that are available, like resources online, and like the app, the Paired app, is about saying we need intervention before intervention is required. So basically, you need something which is small, which is everyday, which is just helping to facilitate learning about what relationships are about before the crisis hits, because it's much harder to solve a problem than actually to work through issues. And we know that most people who go into counselling, couple counselling, are at a point of crisis where you're looking at amicable separation as much as resolution.
So you mentioned a couple of times that the effects of technology, I guess. So you've talked about like TV and like how relationships are portrayed on TV shows and in movies and things like that. And then you've also just touched on the Paired app as well. And we know that you have written a book called The Couple Relationships in the 21st Century. So I guess, what does a relationship look like in the 21st century? And like, how does it then technology kind of play into that?
I think relationships now are often... So first of all, relationships probably are very similar. I mean, that's the broad brush. We are in the end humans. We've always been humans. Therefore, we relate to each other in a psychodynamic way, which is probably pretty consistent across time in some way, although the gender roles and the household dynamic may be very different, say, from the 50s to today in terms of, who does household labour, et cetera, et cetera. I think the way technology plays in the first instance is how people are coupling up. And we know the role of dating apps. And they're now ubiquitous. And during the pandemic, it's interesting that dating app, I think they went up a third of usage. People were signing up to them more, but also how people were using them was different. That changed over this pandemic period across the board in different national contexts. So it was that, rather than even Tinder, which is just meant to be a hookup app where, you go on, you pick someone, you swipe right, left, and that's how that works. Actually, that's not even how Tinder's working now. People are spending longer getting to know each other through dating apps, and they're wanting to forge a connection and get to know someone before they swipe. So, it might be you're dismissing people with the swipe left, but it doesn't mean that you don't want to try and find out something about that person before you make those decisions about, is this worth pursuing? So I think people are getting more sophisticated about using those apps and realizing you can use technology to find out about someone. It's just a mediation. And because so much of us across the world was locked down and we couldn't go out and see people, we all got very proficient with Zoom and other platforms to actually connect with each other. And so there was a lot of Zoom dating. There was a lot of Teams dating, or whichever platform we had available through work as well. I'm sure work funded a lot of couple relationships to get into I think that's the first point. And also people are becoming more sophisticated about how dating apps work. So which one do you download? Which one suits the type of relationship I want? Do I want to have casual hookup? Do I want to meet people who are like-minded? Do I want to look for friends and possibly a relationship? People are making decisions about what's the profile of the app and how that might then transpire into the potential for success. And we know, for example, dating apps are really good at pairing people of like minds. So that if you're going into an app and you're looking for a relationship, that goes in with a mindset. You're not walking into a bar and thinking, what does this person want? They're drinking gin and tonic. Does that mean anything? You're actually knowing this person is serious. Now, okay, there may be some people who aren't being genuine. There may be some, deceit as well, and we can't disregard that. But people are getting savvy about reading some of that, I think, a lot more. And also about how algorithms work in dating apps. But if you're going in with the mindset of I'm looking for a relationship, this is what I'm looking for, then actually that's a positive starting point if you're going on certain apps. And I think that's really positive. But then there's that next step, okay, you found someone, it's going great. You met through technology. Where do you go then? And it's interesting, actually, that it's only recently in the last 6 months, maybe a year, about a year, under a year, that actually relationship apps are starting to appear on the market. So this kind of taking people through from where you've met online, this is all normal. How do you actually sustain that relationship? You may want something which just holds you. And if we think of those relationship apps as just trying to hold couples, they're not trying to intervene. They're not personalized. It's impossible to have a personalized provision when you're dealing with, hundreds of thousands of people potentially. So I think it is important to think about those apps as being something which can add information which you have to do a bit of work at finding out what is it that I want to know about, but also thinking about theories of change. So we need to think about how do relationships work, how do they function, and what do they need to become more positive?
So, Jacqui, Nathan and I have been together since 2007.
Yeah.
And we were together long before the smartphone, long before the dating apps. And if I'm brutally honest with myself, there is no way that I would have selected my introvert husband off of a dating app. I just can't see how we would have forged a connection that we have. So I'm really curious, do you think that the way that people are meeting through technology and on apps like that is changing the state or the starting environment for their relationship? Or do you think once they cross the threshold into the real world, do you think it's the same?
I suspect it's a bit of both. So you're meeting people you never would have met. That's the first thing. And also distance is collapsed. So it isn't just, who's in my local area, who goes to the local place where I drink, or my local cafe or my local bookshop, or however we used to connect with each other and meet new people. It's about saying, well, this is someone who's got like mind, like interests and lives 100 miles away. Well, it's only distance. And so you're almost collapsing proximity to thinking about emotional proximity, about connection. And I think that's changed things. So unless you're looking for just a hookup, you're basically looking for someone who's of a like mind. And I don't know if you wouldn't have found your partner. I mean, that's what's really interesting.
Just don't know if I would have found this one.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't know, because there would have been something about the quality and the dynamic that connected you, which you may not have thought about and noticed explicitly, but suddenly actually when you're putting it down on paper, those are the qualities that I really like in someone. You mean they're genuine, they're authentic, they make me laugh. In the end, those are things that dating apps are very good at pulling out, which when you're meeting someone and, you're on a dance floor, it's very hard to tell all of that stuff. It's usually about, do I fancy someone? Is there an immediate, quote, chemistry? And that's probably a very suspicious way of starting a relationship, because chemistry
especially if it's after a few drinks.
Exactly. And I'm not saying, chemistry in the sense of you've had a few drinks, you're on a dance floor, isn't this great? That those relationships can't last. But we also know statistically that 40 to 50% of relationships end in divorce, unfortunately. And maybe not even unfortunately, if those are positive relationships for the duration that they were together, then fantastic. Relationships are not necessarily we should stay with someone just to stay in that relationship. So we also have to change that mindset, I think, as well, about what is a positive relationship. It can be for the duration of the relationship that may have an end date on it, and that's fine as long as you can sort that amicably and things like that. But on a dance floor, in a bar or in a bookshop or wherever it is you're meeting, probably not a bookshop because that's a different example, but you are actually just saying, do I fancy someone? And there is obviously on all apps, nearly all apps are based on facial attraction. So do I fancy this person? Swipe right, left. Most people truthfully only read the bio and what the person has said about themselves and their qualities and who they really are and get to know them if they first find them attractive. So is that any difference to eyes across the dance floor? I don't know if it is actually. That is saying, I think this person's a bit cute. find out a bit more. And I think that's where there is a similarity to how we're relating and how we're connecting with one another. And that role of technology in that is actually facilitating that opening where you then take it into real life. And real life happens, depending on lockdown, within a few weeks or a few months.
Yeah. Hey, Jacqui, obviously you've joined us on the Date Forever podcast. We talk about dating yourself and your chosen person forever and ever. And one of the things that you mentioned in that study that was quite interesting was those mundane things. And one of our favorite questions for guests is, what do you recommend to keep a relationship fueled up? So I want to take this opportunity for you to tell us all about this incredible app, Paired.
Thank you. Paired, I'll tell you the story of how I got involved with Paired, because I think that's also says about how it works. So basically, I just finished the study, and then the Paired app was just something that was developing, so it didn't exist. And so the CEO came to me and said, Kevin, I've read all about your research. It's really interesting. Do you want to be involved? It connects with the app and what we believe the app is about and how the app functions. And for me, that was really important. The app is based on research evidence. So there's a lot of apps out there which is based on selling a product. It's based on a principle of, do X, Y, or Z and it's all great. This was actually, that remains based on relationship science. So it's about, what do couples do to maintain their relationships? How do they solve problems? How do they work through conflicts? So, we had this conversation about, was there synergy of what we both wanted? And the answer was yes. And that's really positive, that the app was built through relationship science from my side, and from Kevin and the tech team's side was, how do apps function? How do they work to connect people and to work as technology? And I think that's a very a rare marriage coming together. What I know about technology can literally be written on a postage stamp. That's not my area of expertise. What I bring is relationship research expertise. And so we've got almost two sides that came together and then have proliferated with lots of people as the app has gone from strength to strength and come on the market and is being used by thousands and thousands and thousands of people, successfully used. So what the app does is work on a daily gesture. So you get a daily prompt where you connect with your partner. So both partners can sign up, and you get a prompt that comes through and you respond to it. And then when you've responded, your answer stays in the app, and then your partner responds and they can then see your answer and you see their answer. And then you get that point of dialogue. So any app can only work on communication, basically, because it is in the end technology. So you then see each other's answers and you then talk about that. It's a prompt. It basically is a provocation in some cases to thinking, okay, we've not thought about this. Sometimes it's a sweet spot and there's a smile and, oh, that's really lovely. Yeah, thanks, that's cheered me up for the day. Another point is like, we're going to have to come back to that. That's a really difficult area. How do we manage conflict? Oh, gracious, we had that terrible row. Are we actually communicating in negative ways rather than positive ways? How do we manage issues? And for some people, that's really hard. They don't want to think about how they're communicating. And so what the app does is facilitate people's learning about how to communicate more effectively, whether it's about an emotional connection, whether it's about sex and intimacy, whether it's about bereavement is a recent one we've covered. So it's areas that you might not have even thought about, but that actually are part and parcel of all of our lives and as couples. How do we manage family? Maybe our family of origin are, more interfering than we might like, or our partners are. How do we manage friends and extended kin networks? So there's lots of areas of how do we facilitate people's learning and just support people to find that information out themselves. And then there's the couple games element. So making it a bit fun as well. Because if it's all hard work and it feels like, no, this is going to be like really, I'm going to ask a deep probing question and then you're going to answer and, we may even have a row about it, then, that doesn't sound very interesting.
They're not going to come back. And there goes your subscription model business. You want them coming back. And
exactly. So, you've got to make it fun and engaging. But also, I will come back to the argument point as well, is having an argument isn't negative. Falling out isn't negative.
Yeah.
We've actually got to learn to disagree in relationships and talk about that and manage that. So where, for example, if we have problems with sex and intimacy in our relationship, how do we manage that? Where should we have those conversations? How do we broach, you're not really doing it for me? How can we spice up sex life? How can we sustain sex life over a lifetime, for example? Having those conversations are really, really difficult because they're painful. They touch our deepest insecurities. So the app isn't, all flippant and lovely and isn't it all kind of on the surface area? It is also saying, how do we get to know each other at those deeper levels and build the trust between you where it's safe to have those personal conversations, but learning where and how to have those conversations. So, the I feel statement rather than like, you're always doing this. It's better to say, I feel that actually this was quite difficult. So it's learning how to communicate effectively, but also if something's not working for sex and intimacy, for example, when to have those conversations, not after you've had sex is the big one. If something's not working, don't just say, oh, that didn't really work for me. Straight after, because that is crushing.
Very
it's
vulnerable state,
Exactly.
especially if you're still naked. Very vulnerable state.
Should you have conversations about sex in bed? Should those actually come out of the bedroom and happen before sex as opposed to after sex, for example? So all of those things are really important to think about how and where you have those conversations. But it's that dailiness of just saying, well, have you thought about your partner on a daily basis? Because we know from all of the research that relationships benefit from regular daily input. And we completed a very large evaluation of the app. And, we've been trying to work out, is it actually effective and independently from the app itself? And the evidence is yes, it's really working. Couples are feeling their relationships are strengthened by using the app. People are getting a positive benefit in relationship quality because they're learning how to communicate. They're learning about each other and themselves. And that's really important to think that in a relationship, there's three parties. There's you, there's your partner, and there's the couple relationship. And you have to put work into all of those three things because they're all interdependent.
Yeah, there's so many things that I love about this app and the concept. So I've got a few friends who are using it. And one of the great things that I love about it is that it's prompting conversations before you have to take the turn off. So like you may not have ever come up in a relationship. You may not have ever come across a situation or an idea or a concept yet. And this app is prompting you to think about something that's not yet occurred. So you're kind of getting this opportunity to have a pre-conversation before you've hit that sort of speed bump or whatever it might be. And it's almost like the absence of conversation is masking that there could be a problem up ahead if you've got drastically different views before you're in the heat of the moment of the thing actually happening. So I really like that.
But it's also prompting the conversations before either party is triggered.
Yeah.
And while you're in the heat of the moment, someone might escalate to a 10 when if it's prompted and you're not actually in the moment, you might only be a 3 or something like that.
Probably shouldn't use this term with a very professional researcher, but we call those like emotionally sober, like where you're just neutral. Yeah, you're not drunk on anger and frustration and triggers, but emotionally sober and get to have these conversations.
Yeah.
But also, I've got one of the couples that I know who are using this app she's incredibly emotionally literate. She's got high EQ. And her partner struggles to express emotions and thoughts and things quite a lot. And it's something that he's working on, but he struggles. And one of the great things about the app is that he gets the question and he has time to reflect on it and answer it in his own time, and they still get to move forward. Whereas if they're having that conversation in a verbal way, she just sits there and in his discomfort, which he then can't process. So they're actually making a whole lot of progress because they get to have the conversations but still process and think about their own answers in their own time. And I just love that. I think that's such a great way to have some of those conversations where you get to decide how you think or feel about that thing before coming together and having the chat. But the other thing that I love about this concept is that it's destigmatizing some of these conversations. And I think I feel like this is going to be like a snowball, that the more and more people who are using this app, the more and more people who will use it, and it's going to grow and grow and grow. And we're going to all be talking about all of these things all of the time. And it'll be like, hey, we had that question come up not long ago as well. Hey, we did that quiz. This is what we did. This is what we learned. This is how we navigated it. So I think there's like so many tiers of influence in what you're doing. And I just love it. So thank you so much for bringing your gifts to the world and then creating it in a really accessible and cheap way.
Thank you. And that is what we set out to produce. And so it's great to hear that, that you basically, it isn't about couples who have a need for something. It isn't about, a crisis point, as you say. It's about couples, all couples, needing to just grow, keep growing. And we know that couples need to keep growing. And we know that adaptability is one of the strongest points in sustaining a relationship. And so it is just, how do you keep growing individually and together, and the relationship growing alongside that? And that is how it's meant to function. So it's great that you're hearing such positive responses on it.
Yeah.
And what was amazing about doing the evaluation research is that all of the people were saying it's really helped, it's really strengthened our relationship, it's made us talk about things, and things like the new couple games function. It's also a bit of a laugh as well. So on top of the learning, it's also a bit of fun. And I think that's really important, because we know actually what constitutes a date night is, well, if you only have one night a week or one night a month, depending on how much time you have available, then it's hard to actually just think, well, that's got to be this really special time. But actually having a few minutes that you put into a quick quiz, it's just getting to know each other. And the whole point from that is not the questions that we ask, it's the conversations that it provokes going forward. And I think that's what any good app should aim to do. It's what happens outside the app is as important, because the app is the trigger point. It's the provocation to get you to think about these things. Everything can't happen within an app. No one wants to live their life inside technology. Hopefully.
No, and I think we've learned that over the last year or two, that we don't love living inside technology 100% of the time. We like real people and real contact and real hugs.
Yes, absolutely. So, it's designed to help people think about their relationships outside the app, as well as to think about routinization. So, to think about, well, we know that if you put a bit in every day, it gets stronger. So it's that, it's the affirmative cycle. So it's, the virtuous cycle. So if you put a bit in, then it gets stronger. So you put a bit in, it gets stronger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how the app functions. And relationships are, if you look at the data that we've got from the evaluation, it's basically that the people who are using it on a regular basis, several times a week, and then the people who are using it over a longer period of time, their relationships were the ones that were becoming stronger and stronger and stronger over time, because it's just incremental steps. And yes, you can say, well, what happens when you get to the top? Well, you just get stronger and stronger, and also sustaining high positivity is really hard work too. So, and fun hard work, but, it is something that you can't rest on your laurels and think, oh, well, our relationship's perfect, so we don't need to put anything in, because that just is not the case. Even if it feels like it's going fantastically smoothly, you're going to hit a rock. You're going to have something which suddenly is like, oh, well, I don't feel very good today, or my boss shouted at me today, or I just feel in a really bad mood, or suddenly you're together longer and children come along, or you get older and suddenly menopause, and all of the things that, your audience may not be thinking about yet. It'll happen. And therefore having the resources to deal with those things that everyone encounter over life actually is really important before they encounter them.
Yeah, I think that's so important to acknowledge as well, because we aren't the same people that we were when we got together, and we aren't the same people that we were 5 years ago. And there's so many external factors, I think, and internal factors too. Like, we grow as humans, we learn more as we go along, and we change as humans. And I think, it's probably a bit naive to think that we can learn everything and then just exist for the rest of our lives. And I think that'd be a pretty boring existence as well.
Yeah, and it'd be like, well, you've done your qualification in relationship studies, and then you've done that, so tick, and now you know everything. And we know that just isn't the case. We know that it is about carrying on, putting the work in, because that's how relationships work. And, I've written quite a lot about the idea of relationship work, and it's not very sexy to talk about relationship work, but actually it's what is needed. Relationship work is how relationships function, and we can wrap it up and talk about it in different terms, but in the end it's grafting. got to put the graft in to make relationships carrying on to be sustained in a positive way. Because if you don't, they can become secondary to your life. Suddenly what's important is all of the other peripheral stuff, and the relationship is just taken for granted. So it's actually saying, no, we need to see it as something which is as important as all the other aspects of our lives, and actually probably more important because it underpins those other areas of our lives. So we know, if you've got a strong relationship, everything else, parenting, our functioning at work, our happiness with our friends, all of that other stuff is going to be happier and more positive if we actually have that underpinning connection with someone which is positive.
Yeah, we absolutely believe that that quality of your relationship drastically impacts the quality of your life forever, not just in the moment for this week or next week, but forever. I know that there's a long-term Harvard study that indicates all of those things and confirms this, not just as a gut feel that Sammy and Nath have, but there's some data that says your health and your well-being is stronger if you've got a stronger romantic relationship. Hey, Jacqui, this has been such an amazing chat. Thank you so much for sharing your genius with us. If I can be a little bit cheeky, I know you said that one of the great things that you can do is fuel up your relationship in these micro moments every day. But if there was one more top tip recommendation to keep a relationship fueled up and thriving, what would you say?
Oh, one top tip. Having started by saying, no, you can't just do one top tip.
An extra.
To put something into your relationship every day, whatever it is, to just take a moment every day to think about your partner and your relationship, and in that thought, in that moment, to do something, whatever it is, whether it be bring your partner a cup of tea. I notice you're drinking cups of tea there, to give a hug, to just say, I love you, or to just put your hand on their arm, to just... or any part of their anatomy. But basically, just do something, whatever it is, every day, to just say, hey, I'm here, we're here, this is really important to me, however you do that. And I think that is the biggest top tip. And couple language is about knowing in your couple relationship what that language is and knowing what that gesture means. So if you put your arm around Nathan, then he knows what's that symbolizing, the look. There you go, the look. That look is something that you two do, which just doesn't need lots of words. It takes 3 seconds and it communicates everything. So it's just holding on to those things that you as a couple have developed as your private language to say, hey, you, me, us, job done.
Yeah.
Get through
I love
the day.
that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Hey, this really has been amazing. Thank you so much. To say thank you, we have given 100 days of medication to nursery school students in Ethiopia. This program is looked after an organisation called New Ways, and we know that these early days of childhood are really important to get some of those really basic things right. So thank you so much for allowing us to do that, and that's been possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One.
Cool, that's really great. Thank you.
No worries. So, Jacqui, if people want to connect with you or get one of your books or learn a little bit more about what you do or get the
Download the app.
Yeah. How should they connect with you?
A couple of websites. If you go to getpaired.com or look on any of the app stores to download the app, then please do. It's Get Paired, or just type in Jacqui Gabb and Paired app and you will find me. And the relationship research information is on my university website, which is either through the Open University, where I'm affiliated, or through enduringlove.co.uk. And you can find out all the resources there about publications.
Amazing. Yeah, Thank you so much, Jacqui.
Thank you very much. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.